5, and undoubtedly it had roof chambers, and possibly other buildings were associated with it, along the same lines as Solomon's temple. This second temple did not contain the Ark of the Covenant, which seems to have disappeared before Nebuchadnezzar captured and looted Solomon's temple in 607 BCE according to the account in the apocryphal book of 1 Maccabees 1. 21-24, 57. 4. 38, 44-51, there was one lampstand instead of the 10 that were in Solomon's. The golden altar, the table of showbread, and the vessels are mentioned, as is the altar of burnt offering, which, instead of being of copper as was the altar in Solomon's temple, is there described as being of stone. This altar, after being defiled by King Antiochus Epiphanes in 168 BCE, was rebuilt with new stones under the direction of Judas Maccabeus. The temple rebuilt by Herod. This temple is not described in any detail in the scriptures. The primary source is Josephus, who personally saw the structure and who reports on its construction in the Jewish War on Jewish Antiquities. The Jewish Mishnah supplies some information, and a little is gained from archaeology. Therefore the description set forth here is from these sources, which in some instances may be open to question. Picture, Volume 2, p. 543. In the Jewish War I, 401 XXI, 1, Josephus says that Herod rebuilt the temple in the 15th year of his reign, but in Jewish Antiquities 15, 380-11, 1, he says it was in the 18th year. This latter date is generally accepted by scholars, although the beginning of Herod's reign, or how Josephus calculated it, is not established with certainty. The sanctuary itself took 18 months to build, but the courtyards, and so forth, were under construction for 8 years. When certain Jews approached Jesus Christ in 30 CE saying, "This temple was built in 46 years," Joe 2. 20, these Jews were apparently talking about the work that continued on the complex of courts and buildings up until then. The work was not finished until about 6 years before the destruction of the temple in 70 CE, because of hatred and distrust of Herod. The Jews would not permit him to rebuild the temple, as he proposed, until he had everything prepared for the new building. For the same reason they did not consider this temple as a third one, but only as a rebuilt one, speaking only of the first and second temples, Solomon's and Zerubbabel's. As to Josephus' measurements, Smith's Dictionary of the Bible 1889, Volume IV, p. 3203 says, "His horizontal dimensions are so minutely accurate that we almost suspect he had before his eyes, when writing, some ground plan of the building prepared in the Quartermaster General's Department of Titus's army. They form a strange contrast with his dimensions in height, which, with scarcely an exception, can be shown to be exaggerated, generally doubled. As the buildings were all thrown down during the siege, it was impossible to convict him of error in respect to elevations, colonnades and gates." Josephus writes that Herod doubled the size of the temple area, building up the sides of Mount Moriah with great stone walls and leveling off an area on the top of the mountain. The Jewish War, I, 401 XXI, 1. Jewish Antiquities, 15, 391-402-11, 3. The Mishnah Midot 2. 1 says the Temple Mount measured 500 cubits 223 meters, 729 feet square. On the outer edge of the area were colonnades. The temple faced the east, as did the previous ones. Along this side was the colonnade of Solomon, consisting of 2 aisles with columns of marble pillars. On one occasion, in the winter time, Jesus was approached here by certain Jews asking if he was the Christ. Joe 10. 22-24. In the N and W were also colonnades, dwarfed by the royal colonnade on the S, consisting of 4 rows of Corinthian textoi acute miritra longo. Temple 1080. There were several courts through which a person passed as he proceeded to the central building, the sanctuary itself. Each succeeding court was of a higher degree of sanctity. Passing through the court of the Gentiles, one encountered a wall 3 cubits 1.3 meters 4.4 feet high, with openings through which to pass. On its top were large stones bearing a warning in Greek and Latin. The Greek inscription read according to one translation, "Let no foreigner enter inside of the barrier and the fence around the sanctuary. Whosoever is caught will be responsible for his death which will ensue." The New Westminster Dictionary of the Bible, edited by H. Geman, 1970, p. 932 On the occasion when the Apostle Paul was mobbed in the temple, it was because the Jews rumored that he had brought a Gentile within the forbidden area. We are reminded of this wall, though Paul was using the term wall symbolically, when we read that Christ destroyed the wall that fenced off Jew from Gentile. F2. 14, FTN. Act 21. 20-32. Court of Women. The Court of Women was 14 steps higher. Here women could enter for worship. Among other things, the Court of Women contained treasure chests, near one of which Jesus sat when he commended the widow for giving her all. Mr. 12. 41-44. Lu 21. 1-4 In this court were also several buildings. Court of Israel and Court of Priests. 15 large semicircular steps led up to the Court of Israel, which could be entered by men who were ceremonially clean. Against the outside wall of this court were storage chambers. Then came the Court of Priests, which corresponded to the courtyard